Hello and welcome to the Chrysler Museum of Art. I'm Rick Salzberg, Director of Public Relations. We're going to be talking about the exhibition, The Quilts of Gee's Bend. Now, Gee's Bend is an isolated community in Alabama with an incredible tradition of quilt making. And around us, and on these walls and in these galleries, are about 70 quilts from a remarkable tradition through the Depression and very hard times during the Depression, and before and after the women of Gee's Bend made quilts.
Since the Southern African American culture was already known to have produced, among other things, some of the greatest music in the history of planet Earth, there had to be an artistic component of that, a parallel, but it hadn't really come to light. So for the last 15 or 20 years, I've been traveling around the South and photographing, interviewing, finding, collecting, and putting together evidence of the premise that I came to understand, which is that Southern African American culture, which was thought to be essentially non-productive in the visual arts and other kinds of so-called intellectual creativity, Southern African American culture had developed some of the greatest visual arts in the history of this country, at least, and it just wasn't known and recognized. I had heard about Gee's Bend not because of these quilts, but because of just as a social phenomenon. It was one of the only places, or perhaps the only place, still existing, because it was an isolated community of a few hundred people, difficult to get into and get out of. Most of the people there were born there, lived there, died there. Very few people came in. So I was curious to see what kinds of artistic phenomena might exist that we just didn't know about. I went there not expecting to find these remarkable quilts. I had a clue. I had seen a photograph in a book of Annie Mae Young. It was a small photograph, but there was a quilt in her yard that was one of the most remarkable works of art that I had ever seen. It's now on the cover of the book that accompanies this show. And I decided to just go and see who she was, and if possible that quilt still existed. And one thing led to another. I came and found her one night late, and she was scared of me and I was scared of her, and she asked me to come back in the daylight, so I stayed overnight and came back the next day.
Quilts that I made, I never thought to hang in the museum up on the wall. When Bill Arnett come to my house looking for that quilt he see in the book, I said, "You don't want that quilt?" I said, "I don't even know where that quilt at." He said, "Give it a try, I found it." I said, "I don't know where to start." He seen the quilt on the wood pile. A man took it off the wood pile, took the picture off the wood pile and put it in the book. And he saw it.
And we found that quilt, though she didn't think she had it.
And up under those springs and up under the mattress, me and him and his son went. And he found that quilt. I said, "That's the quilt you He said, "This it." I said, "Well, let's take it, let's have it, let's go ahead on." He said, I don't want you to give it to me. I'm going to give you something for it. I don't want you to give it to me. I said, "I could have been brought that up. That ain't no good. I made them quilts for my children to keep on." And they done tore that up. They done wore that out. And that's the quilt hanging up in there on the front of the book.
That led to her sending me to see another person, and that person sent me to see another person. It took us a while to trust each other and respect each other, but eventually they took out what they call the old ugly raggly things, which was what I was looking for. They thought I must be looking for pretty and fancy things, which they made occasionally but didn't like to. And I said, "No, I want to see what you really make, what you did to keep yourself warm."
At first, when Mr. Arnett came by my house and he looked at my quilt, that quilt hanging over there on the wall, he thought it was something, but I thought it was nothing.
And as it turns out, that tradition among African Americans of making these very improvisational and more or less unique quilts goes back hundreds of years. Again, it was never very well documented. The only African American quilts that got documented were the so-called fancy and pretty ones that women made because the slave owner and thereafter would say, "Make me a pretty quilt," and show them a pattern. But behind the scenes, these women were making things that came totally out of their own hearts and souls and minds, And these patterns that you see on the wall here all go back, well, they're not patterns, these styles go back hundreds of years, and in Gee's Bend, basically 200 years to the origin of the community. They didn't really come to light until fairly recently.
We had a hard time to grow up. We had towed every drop of water. We had towed every stick of wood to try to keep warm, and work hard all the summer, and you might not even got a dime out of the crop. We had hard times coming up, and they raised the hogs, they raised the chicken, they raised the goats. That's what we had, the cows, to milk the cows. That's what we had, the corn they make out the field. That's what we lived on. We lived off the earth.
And me and my brother, we would tote water. We would cut the wood. See, my daddy was away all the time. And we had everything to do, and Mama, she would just be away from quilting. So when I became 14, it was 14 when I started quilting. She said to me, she said, I want you to learn how to make quilts. The first quilt I ever made was a string quilt, and I have it today. I said that one I never give away.
I went to school barefooted. A lot of time, I stayed back. They kept me back. I was not dumb. They kept me back because we couldn't go to school. We didn't have nothing to wear. But a lot of time I cried when my mother told me, you can't go to school. And that grunt, it used to be so cold. I wanted to go to school because I wanted to keep up with my classmates. I didn't want them to leave me, but they left me. But I finished school, and later I graduated from college in 1976. The more we go to different places and I see my quilt hanging in the museum, I know my quilt is beautiful. I know I got a fine art hanging on there on the wall.
We lived in such a raggedy house until we had to plaster our house with newspapers and different paper books, and then quilts hang upside the wall to help to keep the wind out. And so our parents made these quilts just for warming. Never thought we'll see this today, quilts hanging on the wall called artists.
In Gee's Bend, Alabama, one of the most popular patterns is called housetop. And basically what they do is they take a center block of fabric and then they put rectangular strips around it. This is a pattern that nationally is commonly called log cabin because the center is thought to represent the chimney on the cabin and then the strips represent the logs. Now normally in most parts of America, this type of unit would be one small patch and many of them would be used to make a quilt. This is something very different that the Gee's Benders do, is they take these patterns and make a whole quilt out of a single block. Now sometimes they use it other ways too. This is a housetop variant where you basically have a number of patches, but not arranged in a tightly organized fashion, so that it has real vitality and life. Basically, you would normally, if you were doing this in other parts of the country, you might have 9 patches here where they'd be in neat little rows. Here you have 8, 2 at the bottom and 3 over 3 at the top. Now, the colors go from beige to pale yellow to coral to red. Here, cherry red and peach. Now let's look at how this same type of pattern works out when done in pale yellow and beige. It almost looks like a minimalist painting, with a little surprise element in here, that red stripe. Now you may have noticed the texture of these. Something else that's very different about Gee's Bend's quilts is that the women use all sorts of fabrics. And in the 1970s, there was a cottage industry of making pillow shams for Sears and Roebuck. And with the leftover corduroy, they started making corduroy quilts. Something you don't get, as far as I know, in any other part of the country. But they have wonderful texture. You have the ribbing of the corduroy giving them real life and vitality. So on the wall they read like painting, but they're also rather sculptural. These quilts are amazing.